I know from my personal experience and as a marriage mentor working with thousands of women from every kind of faith background that it's easy to become bitter when you feel that you are lacking a true spiritual equal and that maybe you're being forced to lead your family spiritually by default. Don't despair. We've got lots of helps and ideas for you in this episode of the WifeSavers Podcast. Enjoy.
Bags are packed, are you ready to go? This time tomorrow we'll be on the road, riding with you in the sunnier days. I wouldn't want it any other way.
Welcome to the WifeSavers Podcast, where multi-award-winning author and global marriage educator Ramona Zabriskie provides answers to your real wife questions. Our goal is to help you appreciate your womanhood, prioritize your personal development, and craft a powerful partnership with the man in your life. Hi, I'm Hannah Allen, and I'm proud to introduce my parents, Ramona and Dale Zabriskie. And yes, this is how they talk all the time. Let's listen.
Taking the good with the ups and downs.
Hi, this is Dale Zabriskie, and once again sitting across the table from the beautiful Ramona Zabriskie.
How kind of you.
It's a beautiful day. Beautiful day in the neighborhood, as they say.
You know what that reminds me of?
What's that?
Fred Rogers.
Beautiful day in the neighborhood.
Yeah, exactly, right?
That's his trademark,
He was the
right?
PBS Beautiful Children's Show, PBS show that I grew up with.
Mr.
that
Rogers'
Americans
Neighborhood.
loved.
Yeah.
At least my generation. And
I think
actually more than one
he was on there
generation.
for a long time. We even got to go to the studios in Pittsburgh and where he recorded
so
it.
Special. It was on his birthday.
Oh, that's right. I
It was
forgot.
on Fred Rogers' birthday. Well, the only reason that I think that's appropriate that you brought up Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood, but the idea of Mr. Rogers and Fred Rogers, he was just like practically perfect in every way.
That's right. The male Mary Poppins.
And our letter writer today, I bet she wishes her husband was Fred Rogers. Listen to this. She says, I've been married for 22 years. For the most part, it has felt like a normal marriage with ups and downs, but overall, positive and secure. We've had lots of obstacles like infertility, adoption, special needs children, a biological son with medical issues, loss of extended family, but we just seem to weather on through.
Yeah,
So
you'd
good
have
for
to,
them.
yeah.
That sounds like a pretty normal life, actually.
Pretty much.
Now here's paragraph 2. This is why she wrote to us. A couple of years ago, my husband openly admitted to one of our religious leaders his crisis of faith. Initially, he felt free from the responsibilities of church and religious expectations. He claimed that as he searched for answers, he was becoming more spiritual. But over the past couple of years, he has become more bitter and antagonistic to anything religious. That's her question, is what do I do, right? How do I fix this? Now, she's not the only one who talks to me about these things. So I have like 3 more excerpts from letters that are just representative of dozens, if not hundreds, of women who feel this way and have approached me on that very issue. The idea of a disparity between husband and wife and their ideas about faith and spirituality and church going.
Yeah, this first one sounds like they were doing okay and now they're going apart.
She feels like yes, that's her concern, is that we're drifting apart
Diverging.
because of our difference in spiritual things. Okay, here's another one. She says too, our marriage is solid, but I have felt that we have lost. This is a new letter writer. I just want to make sure this is clear.
Part 2, story 2.
Our marriage is solid, but I have felt that we have lost some of our trust and emotional closeness, patience and understanding. We don't do as many activities together, and we don't hold up our spiritual traditions as much unless I lead the way. This is what I hear a lot. I feel like I carry most of the family unity and spiritual engagement. I would like to feel more connected to my spouse, and I would say that he probably does too. but we're looking for it and need it in different ways.
Oh, that's an interesting point.
So she's
yeah.
catching. That's
Which is probably
let's talk
a
more about that.
positive thing for them.
I think that is
right?
a positive
to
thing.
realize it's different for guys and
But still, there's
gals.
disappointment. There's hurt. There's a little frustration in here that she's the one having to lead the way spiritually for the family. Okay. Here's another one that I've gotten. My husband won't make our kids go to church, so I do.
So I make the kids go to church.
Yeah, because he won't do it.
He won't do it.
And she thinks he's abdicating his responsibility or
Okay.
his leadership of the family spiritually.
So she's dragging the kids to church.
And here's another one.
get
These
it
are
done.
excerpts, right? Here's another one. I give them daily devotions. I pray with them at night. I'm the one who brings up spiritual values and discussions in our home. Why can't he? So this is, again, these are just 4 women representing 4 million women.
Everybody of a spiritual
are
nature.
really struggling and a little sad that they can't relate to their husband spiritually, or he doesn't relate to them spiritually,
right.
or that he's not living up to their idea of what a spiritual leader should be in the home. And there are many religions, Christianity being one, generally speaking, that do believe that scripturally man is to be the head of the home spiritually, and that he's supposed to lead out, spiritually.
And a lot of, if you're attending religious services, there's a lot of messages that are heard from leaders or pulpits, which kind of drive that home.
Men say, arise, men, do your job.
Right, do your job. Be the man, lead the family.
And so if a woman's sitting there hearing that,
that's the expectation.
That's her expectation.
Right, and may not be happening at home.
Now, I have to say that in WifeSavers, we have students, we have women from all over the world, every culture you can imagine, and every corner of the globe. And that would mean...
got every continent but Antarctica.
Yeah,
I
nobody's from
noticed that.
Antarctica yet.
Penguins have a different type of social system there.
But they represent every faith background.
Yeah, that's true.
Truly. And as we're sitting here, I'm thinking, have I ever heard a woman complain that her husband was too religious,
too spiritual,
like he's neglecting me and the kids because of it? And the answer is yes.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But only one.
Okay. Not exactly a statistically significant number. An outlier,
only
as
one.
we say.
And she's from India.
Okay. Well, I was sitting here thinking, too, there are certain religions where very male-dominated type thing.
Oh, that's true.
Right. And then from India, certainly there's a lot of culture of very spirit. Having been there, too. Having been there, it's prevalent. It's just obvious throughout the whole society and culture.
Right.
Of spiritual things.
Right. Yeah. So, though there's a great diversity and ways to believe, generally speaking, our student body, I would say the majority really do believe in God. And this is important to them. It is an issue. So I hope that many listeners are going to relate to it. And we have a lot of ideas and solutions. And I'd like to start, though, by exploring just really briefly what his perspective, or maybe so much his reasons. Why doesn't a guy want to go to church?
His motivation.
Why doesn't he?
What is his motivation?
Oh, it is his motivation. Why doesn't he say, "Hey kids, let's go to church," or "Hey kids, let's have prayer," or "Hey kids, let's read the Bible together today," or whatever. And this is what she's hoping. Why doesn't he?
Because she's there.
What do you mean? What does that mean?
Because she's got that. She'll handle that.
Oh, because she's doing it so well already?
That's going to be part of it.
She's just... Are you saying that... Wait a minute.
Well,
he's like, why bother? She's got it.
Well, it's like most things, right? I've said before on this podcast where I've sat in my lazy boy, coma boy recliner and watch you just move and go and being involved in constant movement. And I'm like, she's got it. She'll take care of it.
This bears we're going to need to talk about this some more here because
off microphone?
No,
Oh,
on
good.
microphone.
Thought
This
I did something
idea
wrong
that
here.
she never, because she may be, her biggest problem may be that she's doing too much. Is that what you're saying? In
okay,
some
yeah.
families,
Yeah.
not across the board.
Okay, sure.
But in some situations, it may be in other situations that he's not comfortable with spirituality or the idea of God or talking about God or
Sure,
whatever
sure.
because of who knows what else going on in his life in either the present or the past.
Yeah. Yep.
Right? Or the way he was raised, or there's too many factors to even fathom. Here's another one, though. Research has shown that the primary worship services of many churches tend to reflect what women respond and relate to more than what men are responding
really?
to. So for a
Interesting.
lot of men, religious services aren't very
Interesting. Motivating. Yeah.
maybe not
So
not
that's
interest.
interesting.
That's true. No, they're boring.
But just generally speaking, in
not
religious
challenging.
services, they are kind of ethereal and conceptual.
Very
and-
relational,
Yeah,
and feelings
yeah.
and experience.
Where if you told me how to fix my rototiller on that's got a broken Johnson rod on it, that would be valuable. Oh, okay.
I hope there's a pastor or two listening to this podcast saying, how can I tweak my sermon this Sunday? Relate to the men. Well, in the
But
right.
I think you're right. I mean, the whole aspect of a spiritual conversation or a spiritual message is one, as you say, of what's my relationship to God. I mean, that if it could, they all kind of boil down to that, don't they?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah. Every spiritual practice or faith.
Yeah.
Yeah, interesting. But I want there to be a little hope there because in the right environment or among relatable and affirming relationships with other men, for instance, I think that many men do come alive spiritually or can grow spiritually. But I'm just saying, what are the reasons behind his choices? That may be one of them. Another one that it may be is that he could actually be fearful of leading or of making the wrong decision for your family or of not cutting it, right?
Oh, it's huge.
When
huge
it comes
pressure.
to your family.
It's a huge
It's
pressure.
pressure?
It's massive. It really is. Right down to, so one of our sons has been, well, all of our sons have gone through what I think is very common for men in their 30s and getting to be 40 is their career, right? And the decisions they make. And the conversations that I have with them they're really hard. I want to do this, but I'm doing this right now, but what if I went over here? But that shift, that change, and then to realize you've got little mouths to feed and lights to turn on and all those things that come with it.
And then add to that
exactly
the sense that I'm spiritually responsible for this family.
Wait a minute. Now my boss I can think about living up to, but you're saying live up to God?
Okay.
See how
I get
that's
it.
a whole different structure and that aspect of the unknown is hard naturally for a guy, right?
What do you mean the unknown?
Well, just what I'm saying. Should I keep this job? Should I shift? Should I change? Should I do this?
They
Should I
want to
do
be
that?
sure they're going to succeed.
Yeah, right. There's a lot of pressure. And so when you have this huge presence that's often hard to define, it can be really, really, like you say, am I making the right decision? Is tough. Yeah, it's hard.
So there could be fear and trepidation that way.
Absolutely.
Okay. Well, there's got to be a gazillion reasons why anybody struggles.
And just the whole idea,
spiritually.
generally speaking, think of Christianity, is based, the 10 Commandments, okay? It all started with Charlton Heston, right? And the 10 Commandments. It's all based on you need to do these things, right? Here are the things you need to live up to. And can be really, really, when it can be so defined that way, but then when you add God onto this big idea of God, it's tough pressure.
All right. A little intimidating to be the
super
head, whatever. Okay.
Super religious person.
I want to give some new perspective. So let's talk about, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4 ways of looking at things from a little different angle, like we always do for our wives, that might open up their minds, their hearts a little towards their husbands. And then I want to give them some solutions. Okay. Some real concrete ideas.
Okay.
So my first new perspective idea is this. You would like your husband to show a little more initiative when it comes to leading your family spiritually, maybe. Or you'd like to see more evidence of or excitement in your husband's walk with God. Maybe. Or maybe you just like to see him have a relationship with God in the first place.
Yeah, just get started.
Right. It's not even existent from what you can see. No matter where you fit in there. Or maybe you just like him to get more excited, more involved, and listen to you and your excitement and what you're learning and how you're growing. And right now, he's not even interested in that. All right?
Okay.
Wherever you're at, it's important to begin by recognizing that no matter what your hopes and dreams for your husband are from a spiritual standpoint, what happens in his relationship with God, or his lack of a relationship with God, comes down to him and God. Period.
Yeah.
Full stop.
Okay.
Period. Now just be quiet for 3 seconds while we let this sink in. What happens in his relationship with God, or his lack of one, comes down to him and God.
Period. Yeah. And that is so true, I think, of every religion, that and having traveled the world and been in these cultures that have Buddhism or Hinduism or whatever.
Yeah, because you truly have been all over.
But they all come down to this is an individual thing. This is your walk with whatever, fill in the blank, right? But as a couple, that's hard to separate.
It's hard to accept.
It is hard, but you're right. Everybody has their own journey.
Ideally, you want to feel so unified. You want to feel like you're walking hand in hand towards the great light in the sky, and
yeah, if you're going different directions.
Our first 2 letter writers felt like their marriages had started that way.
Right.
And they believed that's how it was going to be. But their husband's spiritual journey took different paths, or a little detour, or they weren't walking as fast as she was towards that great light in the sky. That's disturbing and sad to a woman. I totally get it, because listen, when we were first married, I thought we were going down that path, and that was important to me because I'd grown up in a family where my mom and dad were not on the same page. And it caused a lot of sadness and sometimes contention, right? Outright arguments. In fact, those are the only arguments I ever heard about.
Really?
Was about what was going to happen on Sunday morning, or what was happening that Sunday morning. My dad had plans for the family. My mom had her plans for the family. We're going to church or whatever. So I grew up feeling a real... I just didn't want that to happen in my family. It hurt my heart as a child to see that contention and feel that. And I liked being at church. So I wanted and dreamed about my whole family, including my dad, all going to church together. And so this was my dream. So we got married, and we started off that way. I thought that's where we were heading. But in our first year...
Yeah.
Our first months,
I
was like, time for church, honey. And you were.
So my answer to that is read the book. So
not the good book, Ramona's book.
Ramona's book, which is a good book. But no, it's we've lived that life. We lived that.
That was really, and that was one of the main causes for our file for a separation.
Yeah.
We were heading for a divorce because I'm like, I am not going there.
Yeah, not going down that path again.
So I understand. I really do. The heartache and the worry that these women
But the real
are
point is that
explaining in their letter.
it's his journey and it's your journey.
Yes,
right?
and I wasn't until I recognized and realized and accepted that I think we started to become actually more unified, spiritually speaking. So, I'm thinking God knows us, right? And God knows women.
God knows women. Is that
God knows women. And he knows
that figuratively or literally speaking?
He knows that we're going to push and pull and hit and manipulate, if we have to, our husbands into sharing our faith or meeting us at the same level, on the same place we're at in our spiritual journey. And I'm assuming that he knew that as women, we would tend to be impatient when it comes to the spiritual growth of our husbands, right? Mm-hmm. And that's how he was right. That's how it's turned out. I've talked and listened to hundreds of women. I can tell you this, dear listener, I can tell you this, that wives are rarely effective when it comes to trying to convince an unbelieving husband to submit to God.
Mm-hmm. Consistently.
I haven't seen it happen. Yeah. I've actually never seen it happen. That she's trying to push, pull, hint, manipulate, bully, whatever. And she's well-intentioned.
Well,
she's
yeah. Oh, absolutely.
But it never works.
So I'll share with you something I teach the salespeople that I teach, that I work with.
That you bully, hint, control.
Yeah. Right. Just, you will sell and you will like it.
Yeah. What do you teach?
One little thing. When you're talking about buying something, okay, you want somebody to buy something. Now here you've got a wife who wants her husband to buy the idea of going to church or being more spiritual or whatever, right?
Okay.
It comes down to all the things that when you go in, you as a salesperson, you try to convince. Well, I've got this thing. It's an AM, FM, CD, cassette, microwave, toaster oven, dishwasher, right, thing. And it does all these things and it's so wonderful and you need to do that. The bottom line is people buy for their reasons, not yours.
Yeah. Well, that goes to what we're talking about, that we need to consider it as his journey.
Yeah, and that's the only way it's going to happen. It's the only way people buy things. You can help them go down that path. And
we're going to talk more about that when we get to solutions.
As a wife, here are things that you can do, but understand that they may be, in your mind, whoa, these are the best reasons in the world. You'd be an idiot not to buy this thing, right? or not do this thing. But they have to own it. Yeah, they have to own it.
Here's the thing, is that God is going to help them, give them those reasons.
Yeah. Okay. That's a really good point.
I want to talk more about that.
There's another influence out there. Right. Yeah, that need to be cognizant of.
Right. If you believe.
Yeah.
Right. So I want to point out that this applies to, I have found, to women who are married to men who really are religious.
Okay.
All right. They are going to church, but they want them to do better.
Okay.
They
Never
want them
satisfied.
to do more,
okay.
Right? They want them to have a deeper relationship with God or to be more committed to the church or to spiritual practices. And so they're doing the sales job and it's still not working. So whether he has some kind of relationship with God or not, whether he's living up to your hopes, to some degree or not at all, your persuasion may be falling on pretty deaf ears. And whatever, the point is, though, that it's his journey.
Right.
Okay. Number 2 in our perspective shift here is that we need to consider the fairness of our expectations.
The fairness.
Yes. So, what I mean by that is setting up family devotionals every morning is not the ultimate test of whether your husband is leading his home spiritually or not.
Okay. So what's I see. Yeah. There's the litmus test that you're setting up. It may not be the right or fair.
Right.
interpretation of whether they're
You and I
doing
know
a thing.
people who grew up in homes where, yes, there were daily family prayer devotions or whatever it was called in that home.
I knew a guy who before, remember, we have Sonos in our room, in our house, right?
Yes,
Different rooms, and you can
right.
control them all and make them all play the same
Yeah,
music, right?
yeah,
We could
yeah,
do that
yeah.
on Wi-Fi. So he wired with speakers every single room in his house.
Okay. Wow. Wired.
Wired. This was long before.
Not
This was
Bluetooth,
many years
wired.
before Bluetooth. And every home had a pair of speakers. And at 6 a.m.,
No.
the music started. And that was the alarm clock.
Oh, man.
And everybody got up and they dragged their tired butt down to some local,
Where they read
communal
scripture
spot.
together
They
or
did.
something?
They had their quote
Oh,
devotional.
Man.
And
Well, that's one way to do it,
That's
I
one
guess.
way to do it.
But
yeah.
we all know families like that, but that didn't necessarily translate into godly leadership in that home. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
They don't equate. They don't necessarily equate.
Well, yeah, and I think the point you say about fairness, there's lots of ways for a guy to show that he's spiritual. That
and to teach his children and to
sure.
lead his children
Sure.
spiritually.
Exactly.
Like
And-
how?
Well,
Well,
it's,
besides the morning devotional or whatever.
yeah, whatever it is, playing taps every morning, spiritual taps. So how does the teaching happen? I
Yes.
watched just not long ago having grandkids and their parents here. That something gets out of whack, and there's time to sit down and have a little, as I like to say, come to Jesus meeting with the kid. How does dad? How does the father? How does the husband teach? How do they relate? What type of principles are they trying to instill into your children? Right?
Okay. So he can be a spiritual leader in the way he disciplines
Sure.
the children or guides the children or converses
Or what are you trying to
with the
teach?
children.
Right.
If he's pointing his children towards God
Or
to good values.
right, good things, good problem solving, being a good person, interpersonal relationships,
Hard
all the
work or
things
whatever.
that most religions teach. Right?
Yeah.
Take what are the creeds of Christianity? Love one another, serve one another. Those are the
Yeah.
basics. You boil it all down.
Honesty,
Exactly.
integrity.
That's right.
Yeah.
And so if that's being instilled in your home by your husband, consider yourself pretty lucky and on a good track.
So it doesn't
right?
have to be a Bible study.
Right. It doesn't have to
group
be
with the children.
spiritual taps every
necessarily.
morning at 6.
So he could.
I think it was 4:30 for
He
that
could be
family.
leading the family spiritually,
Right.
just not in the way you preconceived her.
Yeah. So your idea of fairness.
Okay.
is Yeah.
That was number 2. Consider the fairness of your expectations. Number 3, consider the weight of God's expectations.
Yeah.
You're nodding your head. You even know what I'm going to say. What
Well,
do you,
because
what do
I
you
mentioned it earlier, right? This idea of
right.
being responsible to God. No, wait a minute. God. Get closer to the mic. That's heavy. That's really, really heavy.
Well, you think about it. I it's hard for me to fathom what that must be like. You go to bed exhausted at the end of a big day, hard work all day long. You wake up the next morning and you feel like the whole
Start over.
world's on your shoulders.
The hamster wheel. You're on the hamster wheel.
Yeah, and every minute you're worried about how you're going to feed the kids or the family or take care of all the things she wants you to do and be. I don't know. And then you add
You're really
on to that.
empathetic to husbands, aren't you? You really are.
I'm writing a book called Husband for Life right now, and he's going to get it straight between the eyes, so don't worry. But yeah, what I do like to do is help women understand their men, and I'm looking forward to helping men understand their women for sure. But my point is that idea of being accountable to God for how he is leading and influencing his family and his children, when you pack that into his packed existence already, I do empathize. I do sympathize because I think I would probably crash and burn if I felt that way.
Well, ultimately, I think it needs to be part of who you are. And,
That's true.
And
Which goes back to what you were saying a few minutes ago about how you converse with the children.
Yeah. not necessarily this big, heavy responsibility
It's about
thing
who
that
you
I have to live
are.
up to, right?
Yeah, interesting. But still, what we're trying to help our letter writers think about is that weight that he does carry, or that you are hoping he will carry, and he feels you hoping he will carry, of God's expectations on him. I want to consider now number 4. Well, before I jump to that, with that weight of expectation, how does the fear of failure play into that for a guy? Because we've established in other podcast episodes, and it's one of the things we learn about in WifeSavers, the male fears. And number 1 is the fear of failure, which can be absolutely paralyzing.
Yeah.
Okay, because we're as a man, very externally, we need external affirmation, if you will. So what about that?
Well, I think if you're in a situation like our letter writers have articulated, where the demand or the requirement is to lead, and to lead in this way, or to go to a church meeting,
or you feel like she wants you to be more spiritual,
whatever
person.
it is, right? That's not a natural thing to a guy. It's not an easy thing. I think it has. And I know for me, in my spiritual journey, it really, really had to be developed. And I wasn't, I was into close to 40, I would say, before it kind of clicked for me or made sense to me.
Clicked? Made sense? Where you felt like you were capable enough, or that you were willing?
Yeah, I think
the
willing is part of it. But the whole point of fear of failing, that again, it's this God, right, who I'm responsible to now. That's a very, very heavy thing to consider.
Okay,
and so if my wife is, demanding of these things and saying, you got to do this, you're not. Pretty soon, the easy thing is to say, oh, well, you're right, I'm not. So I'm not going to.
Yikes.
Right.
Okay, so really honest moment here. There must have been times, I want to cry saying it, but there must have been times in our past where you felt that from me.
Oh, yeah. We've established that early in our marriage and such. Yeah, sure.
And so you're saying it's not helpful. It's to feel my disappointment was paralyzing. I just don't even know what the word is. What's the right
I don't
word?
know that we can simplify it quite that much.
Okay.
Because it is a complex relationship, and everybody's got a different dynamics,
Right.
in their own situation.
But it wasn't motivating.
No, and I think it goes back to the whole idea of why did I buy going to church, or why did I buy the spirituality aspect of my life?
Yeah.
It was because of the experiences that I had.
Your personal
Right.
religious
Right.
experiences.
And you've been very helpful in that journey, and we've had lots of conversations, and we've learned together and all this stuff.
But it was a long journey.
Yes.
I think that's a really important point, is that I had to learn to be patient with. We're going to break now for just a minute so I can invite you to my free live masterclass, Understanding Your Husband and Sons. In my work with women in over 70 countries, I found that most of us, when it comes to our husbands and sons, think like Carol in Kenya,
I was expecting him to think like me, behave like me.
or Dana in Idaho,
Shouldn't we just be the same, and shouldn't we just agree?
or Anne in Oregon.
I grew up in a culture where there was a lot of eye rolling and sighing about guys.
And that's too bad, because when we act or react based on false expectations, we end up feeling like Catherine or Farinaz.
I didn't feel I could relate to him because I didn't understand him.
Thought maybe he had to do something with me, and I was taking it personally.
Or getting riled up like Carol.
Made me mad. It's crazy. It was frustrating,
And acting like Anne,
I used to think he should know what I wanted without me having to ask.
which just erodes our relationships and blows up our dreams. So that's why I created Understanding Your Husband and Sons, a super fun, eye-popping deep dive into his brain, body, and emotional makeup. Women have been coming from all over the world and coming away from our time together with an exhilarating sense of hope and power, because now women like Amber, Ann, Dana, and Allison understand
how to communicate my needs, how to be clear about it, how not to be run around, how not to manipulate.
The way I communicate with him isn't any more aggressive or threatening to him.
I can see why he's reacting or why he's responding that way.
That's helped to avoid a lot of the hurt feelings that I used to have.
So if, like Jeannie, you're thinking,
okay, I need to reboot how I think about marriage and men and how they're loved,
please join me at this free live masterclass, Understanding Your Husband and Sons. I'll teach you things you have never heard before and that you won't hear anywhere else. Science and strategies that will knock your socks off and make all the difference in your relationships.
And it just changes everything about how I see him.
There's this huge potential that I was not really tapping into because I didn't fully understand it.
I think the biggest piece is this understanding and appreciation.
We're both so much happier now.
And in how you see yourself.
My confidence as a woman has skyrocketed.
We've made it so easy. Just go to wifesavers.org/masterclass and choose a day and time. I'll meet you there and even answer your questions live. Because like Carol in Kenya or Cindy in Argentina, you'll want to be able to say,
oh, we are wired differently. And that's the beauty of life.
And it set me free. It allowed me to say, okay, I understand now. And I loved him more than ever.
wifesavers.org/masterclass.
Oh, I recommend it to everyone I meet.
So the fourth new perspective is to consider your own worthiness or responsibility.
You got three fingers pointing back at you. Is that what I hear you say?
Right. We when we marry, if we're a woman of faith, and maybe we become a woman of faith after we've been married. Maybe sure. That we all change. You marry the person you married, then the person they become, and the person they're going to be. Three people. But this idea of the spiritual Ken doll, I like to call it, only works if you're a spiritual Barbie.
Yeah.
And I don't know any woman who is a spiritual Barbie. I know I'm not. And so how fair is it, really?
Yeah, but
to want a spiritual Ken?
But the whole Ken and Barbie thing is a product of the 50s, 60s.
I'm a product of the 50s and 60s. Thank you very much. What are you saying?
Well, it's there's a certain idea of what perfectedness is, what perfect is.
Right.
And that,
aren't they making like overweight Barbies now?
Yeah.
And different colored Barbies and
whatever. Right. And but when we deal with the human soul and the human entity and who we are, then it's what is perfect.
What is perfect?
And there is no, and if you take the Christian creed, it says be ye therefore perfect. And so, but there is no perfectedness.
I think that word actually means in the Hebrew, finished.
Yeah, right, complete is what it
be
means.
Therefore finished.
I'd like to be done with this, actually. I'd like to be done with this. But it goes back to the whole idea of perspective.
Okay, all right. So now that we've shaken up our perspective a little bit, how about some solutions?
I'm ready.
I put a P on the front of all of them. You know me in alliteration.
There
so the first
go.
one is peace.
Okay.
This is what are we really gonna do?
Peas?
Peace.
Oh, sorry.
I'm trying to think of a song that has peace and peace, man. I'm talking about peace.
Let there be peace on earth.
Yes.
Let there be peace in my household.
I think we've all gotten it. I hope we've all gotten now that our husband's idea of spirituality may look very different from ours just because he views church or synagogue or temple or the spiritual community center life in a different way than you. Mm-hmm. It doesn't mean he lacks a personal desire for spirituality or a personal desire for God in his life or a personal desire to transform his life. isn't this true that it could be that he is growing spiritually in ways that are just not perceptible to us?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, we all have got this inner voice that's helping, that we argue with or discuss with or whatever, right? Rationalize with. And the more, I think for me, it became more, what's the word? Copacetic. It was together. I was honest with myself. And that was part of
your spiritual journey. Was a big part was becoming honest with yourself, or and accepting the truth,
accepting
about who you are.
And for me, I started with, is there a God? Does God exist? I didn't just assume anything. But once I came to terms with this creed or things, that's when I had more peace. And able to work through things a little easier.
Interesting.
So how do you think this happens for a woman to have peace in a situation like
that? Well, I'm thinking about the differences between men and women. And women prefer, let's say, this interdependency kind of feeling, the collaboration, coordination, cooperation, whereas men in general tend to be more independent, right? And autonomous.
Right. But say that again.
Did I say it wrong? What did I say?
I don't know.
They prefer autonomy.
Autonomous, right? Autonomy, right? Yeah, that's right. Very true. Totally agree.
Do you know a Thomas? I know a Thomas.
Thomas. I wish my mother was going to name me Thomas, but it didn't happen, so I can't be a Thomas. So.
And women also tend to be more open about sharing their problems and their feelings, sharing with other people. And church is a lot about that, spiritually, But men tend to keep their concerns to themselves. We've talked about this a million times in these podcasts. If
that's the general situation, now add this spirituality thing on top of it.
What does that mean in the context of what you're seeing or maybe not seeing in your man's spiritual life? Maybe that explains why you're not hearing a lot about his experiences with God, or what he's reading or not reading, or how he might desire or not desire to grow spiritually. Maybe that's why you're not hearing about those things, because it's happening in there, but he tends to keep it to himself. He's thinking more independently. He's not so much, maybe, not all men are like this, but most men tend towards those ways of processing, if you will, and growing inside. So he might not be as comfortable as you are sitting in a group of couples where you're in a circle sharing your marital struggles or your Bible study group or whatever. But that doesn't mean that he's not reaching out to God in his heart. That doesn't necessarily mean that he's not praying for you. You don't know that.
But I think, and so the whole idea that there's one word, I think, for our conversation so far, it's all about perspective, right?
And perception.
And so the peace aspect I see comes into play. I'm thinking now, if I'm in the shoes of our letter writer, is just be in that point where give the guy a break, right? Can bring a lot of peace to you. Yes. Is that what you're trying to say?
Yes.
Yeah.
You're both approaching the same God with the same desires.
Yeah.
But from a different way.
Right.
He may not be as expressive of it as you are. You're going to be, when I talk to women about spiritual journeys, they're always going to talk about their relationship with God. They're going to talk about their feelings. Whereas if I'm going to talk to a man about his spiritual journey, he's probably going to tell me more about what he's learned. In his study or something,
right.
So a little more functional kind of approach. And there's plenty of room for both, right? So let it be, right? Give your husband peace. Give him a break. I love that when it comes to meeting your expectations for his personal spirituality. You got to respect that. And then you can give him peace by here's another way to give him peace. Appreciate the women in your life that you can talk all about your spirituality or your spiritual journey or the things you're learning.
That's giving him a break
people
too,
that you,
right?
Yes, exactly. Women that you can relate to on a spiritual or a female level, right? Charles Swindoll, you know who he is?
Yeah, he was a Christian pasture. I think he's gone out to pasture now.
I know he was autonomous.
His middle name was Thomas. That's right.
No, he was a great man. He was a former pastor.
Wrote a lot of
author,
books.
A lot of books.
Yeah.
And he said, we men are far more closed toward God and closed toward one another. But women have an openness, a warmth, a responsiveness to the things of God. Women have a desire to grow, to react, to feel, to show affection toward the things of God that is not found in the average man. But I would like to say that is not necessarily expressed by the average man. So this
might be in there, but it's not being shown.
Exactly. So this approach of peace, giving him a break, as you put it, cutting him some slack,
right,
is really about accepting his spirituality or his lack of it. But here's the interesting thing, is that if you can bring that kind of peace and calm into your home and into your heart, I think that's necessary to open the door, basically, for God to do his work with your husband.
That's interesting.
Right? Because it is his work. It's not your work.
Oh.
You were never, God never said it was your work to bring your husband along spiritually. And once you really believe that and let go, it's a great relief not to carry that burden. That's a real burden for a woman.
So if a woman can be true to herself and, this is how I believe, this is how I want to live, how I want to teach my children.
And that's
all that
part
stuff.
of one of our next solutions.
Okay. As long as that congruence is there, right, then, allowing him to.
Yeah, we're going to get to that. You're right. So what I'm trying to say, and I think what you're trying to say, is one of the best things you might be able to do is to simply, peacefully get out of the way. Let God do the work. Okay. So that was number 1, peace. Number 2, praise. That's a word.
Can I get an amen?
Praise,
That's right.
praise.
I want an amen.
And
wait, can I get an a women?
We've talked about how chiding him or criticizing him or instructing him, about what he should be doing for the family or doing for his own personal spirituality or something, how that is counterproductive.
Yeah, not going to work.
Absolutely.
Right.
So if you can put aside all those expectations like we talked about before and accept that he may be progressing spiritually in ways that you can't perceive, or that it's really God's responsibility anyway. So if he believes that you believe that he does have the ability to lead the family, what does that do for him?
Yeah, that's a really interesting thought, because if, in my mindset, if you're harping on me to do this or that or the other, and I'm not, okay, assuming I'm not living up to whatever expectations are there, the message that can come through is real simply to a guy is not just I want, but you're not. See, very much so. And
I'm
then
disappointed
pretty soon,
in you.
Right, pretty soon, what am I going to start thinking?
Translates to God's disappointed.
Yeah,
in you.
yeah, and that's a whole nother situation. But if that's the message I'm receiving, how am I going to ultimately react? I'm going to say, you know what? You're right. I'm not.
All right. You said that earlier.
Yeah. So.
It doesn't make you feel very loving towards me.
No, right.
Interesting. All right. So I want to clarify that I'm not saying that you dismiss him from the responsibilities that you feel like he has in the family. Only God can do that, really. But I'm saying lighten up. You know, how many times have I said that to women? And lighten up and look for the good. Respect and acknowledge his contributions that are different than yours, that are unique, right?
I'm glad you made that distinction.
Praise him is the idea.
I'm glad you made that distinction, because I can see how, if you're saying, what's the bumper sticker, let go and let God, right? That's been around for a long time as part of the message here. But that's not what you're really saying. I'm glad you made that distinction, that
Okay.
it's not a matter of just throwing your hands up and letting go and just, you go do your thing and I'm going to go do my thing.
Mm-hmm.
It's, we're going to do this thing, but we may be on, may not be walking perfectly on the same path.
And the most you're going to have the best chance of someday being a little more unified in that way if he feels like you truly love him.
Yeah.
That you do appreciate the good in him. That you acknowledge what he is contributing to the family, the way he talked to that
And
child.
I'm sitting here thinking
the good
of
choices he made as a good person.
Of two specific couples that we know that have lived in this divergent type of relationship spiritually, who are just the happiest that can be, and they've figured that out, right?
Yes,
very much so.
Right,
they figured out how to do that together,
yes.
And we also
by focusing on the good in one another,
exactly, right,
and what they enjoy together.
Yes, so true. And then we've also seen couples very much change and come together spiritually where they weren't,
but sometimes
for
after
years.
decades.
Yeah, long time.
Decades.
Yeah. So,
yeah,
that's, I'm really glad you made that point. So,
well, that goes to the next one. Our first one was peace. Next solution was praise.
Right.
And here's the third solution, partnership.
Gotta be.
All right.
Yeah.
We kind of covered that, didn't we? So when we're talking about being a Ken doll or a Barbie doll, don't you think guys would rather be thought of as a G.I. Joe?
That's right. Yeah. That's right. In the trenches.
Right. So spiritual warfare, the enemy, and all that kind of stuff. I'm generally speaking, guys. Not every guy thinks like that, but a lot of men tend towards.
But it goes
that
to
kind of idea
solving
being
a problem.
Challenge.
Right.
Yeah,
right.
solving a problem.
Right.
And so that goes to what we were talking about earlier, and going to church and it being boring, unchallenging. That may be how he's perceiving it. And when you're saying let's get spiritual, where's the real something he can dig into, bite into,
yeah,
right?
Yeah,
that's challenging.
That's true.
So
yeah.
I would suggest finding ways, and while we're talking about partnership, find ways to encourage your husband. In a sense, you're helping him without doing it for him. Okay. Just assume that he'd like to be able to lead. It's just difficult maybe for him, but that would be true for you too. It's true for any of us. It's difficult to be a leader. So come alongside him as a partner. You don't have to push him from the back
stuck from
or
behind,
pull him from the front.
That's right.
Let's come along beside him to a partner. How do you do that? Well, here's my suggestions. Express to your husband that you want to be his partner in every sense of the word, but you also want to let him lead and live spiritually in the way that he sees best. So you want to express that to him. Like I just said, honey, I want to be your partner in every sense of the word. How can I do that best?
Right.
I want you to lead. I want you to live.
How can I
spiritually,
help you do that?
but as your partner, what can I do? All right. Ask him how you can help best him spiritually or lead the family if that's what you want it to be like in your home. But listen, be super careful that you do not say it in a way that implies that he isn't spiritual or implies that he doesn't lead in the way you want. But in a way, what you want to do is convey to him that you realize that you might be doing more than he actually wants you to do. Like, am I actually being helpful?
Yeah.
Or do you know what I'm saying?
I do. But I think another point here is, maybe you're going to say this, but I'm going to say it now. Don't define him by his spirituality or level or lack of. Don't make that the thing that he feels like he's...
So when you're asking, I want to be your partner, you want him... How do I do that?
Well, I think what you're saying is just right. Ask those questions, but it can't be the defining factor in the relationship. That you're not leading or you're not doing these things can't be, in the guy's mind, the biggest problem in his biggest failure or deficit's great word. See what I'm saying?
Yes. Now, if you do feel prompted maybe after prayer, to offer him a constructive suggestion, for instance, or what would you think about this or that? It always goes better, ladies, when you preface it with praise and affirmation, how much you appreciate this or that. Or I love the way that you...
And you teach that, generally
yes,
saying,
I love
speaking.
and you mean it. It's very authentic. I
Yeah.
love the way you were tender with our little guy last night, or the way you helped our daughter handle that situation or whatever. I really appreciate how kind you were to me yesterday. That kind of affirmation before you ever get around to, and they don't need to be back to back, but when you get around to making some kind of suggestion, do it with gentleness.
Mm-hmm.
Talk about lightening up, gentleness and respect. That's often done with a question, by the way. What would you think about, or have you ever considered?
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
Rather
good.
than you should.
Play Jeopardy. Phrase it in the form of a question.
There you go.
That prompts me to think about another thing, and that is, I would not want to feel like in this journey, in this partnership, that I have to report to you.
Yikes. Good
right?
point.
That I have to be, there's my report card turning in at the end of the day. This is what I've done, right? That I'm
not doing some kind of performance review.
That's right.
Yeah, okay.
Exactly. Because it's a partnership, it's a journey, but then I can see, how the relation could turn into, okay, I'm doing all this now. All right, honey, it's, we've had our dinner. We're sitting alone. The kids are in bed. All right. So how'd you do today? Right. Type thing.
I see what you're
and
saying.
to the idea of phrasing it in the form of a question, right? Honest questions, right? That, and then
honest questions.
And then accept the answer.
Oh.
Which may be hard.
Yeah.
Maybe it's not the answer you're looking for.
It might be an honest answer that if he's like, no, I'm not feeling it.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Okay. Not working for me, baby.
All right. Well, so, just start by simply asking.
Yeah.
Start by simply asking what motivates him when it comes to spiritual things,
and that's,
or to church.
And to your point earlier, right? It's a doing thing, right?
Oh, it's a doing
to
thing?
To do. I'm a guy. I want something to do. I want a problem to solve. I want something to fix. Right.
Yeah.
And so, as a partner in a partnership, how do we cultivate that?
Maybe there's something going on at church or a service project or something
Some widow
that he
needs
can
some
get
help.
in with the guys and they're
Or
working
it might
side by
be
side.
on Wednesday nights at 9, they're going to play basketball.
Oh, yeah.
Or volleyball or whatever.
Yeah,
some sporting activity that can be a way to be engaged physically and doing something for others.
And hanging out with other guys.
Right.
Because I think some men think that you can't really be a man and be spiritual.
Yeah.
I mean, if you could see other examples.
I think that's the point. And guys look for, people to emulate and to learn from. They really do. Most do. The good ones, I guess, maybe. And often that's where those kind
of relationships
the relationships are formed. Yeah.
Ooh, I love that. All right. So help him find a way to actually be useful or engaged.
Yeah.
And develop relationships.
Yeah, because it start for in a woman's and wife's mind, it kind of starts with going to church, right? I want to go to church, and you've already
that's
said
such a good point. It may not be about going and sitting at church. It may be for him
going and sitting in church.
There's sort of another way in.
Now he's showing me that he's spiritual by going and sitting at church, and that's often the last thing they want to do, right?
Again, we're not asking him to prove himself to us.
Right.
We're just trying to be his partner and helping support his journey, whichever way it goes and how long it takes. Okay, very good. All right, so far we have peace, praise, and partnership. And the last one is, can you guess? It starts with P.
Got to be it's got to be prayer.
Prayer is exactly
what
right.
that means to you, right? Yeah.
Right.
Some private spiritual time.
Right. You can pray for your husband.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So back off. Back off and let your husband pursue his walk with God without your direct, constant intervention, right? Focus, or to continue to focus on your own spirituality in your own prayers. And as I said earlier, there's a much greater chance of winning your husband over spiritually or having some kind of profound impact on him if your own character, and you pointed this out earlier, if your own character and behavior deeply and authentically reflect those beautiful values and truths that are part of your faith. Your actions are going to be far more influential than words. That's not just true of children. Your actions are going to be far more influential than your words with your husband, with your loved one. For instance, if you're always telling him to trust God, honey, just trust God when he's scared, when worried about something going on at work or home or whatever, you're telling him, trust God. That only really works if you are exhibiting that level of trust and faith and courage in your own life.
Yeah, and if it's a badgering or if it's a nagging or for whatever it is,
you're not going to draw him to you or God.
No, but that right in and of itself shows you're not really trusting of God if you feel like you have to step in and
hey, what a good point.
And be the ever-present voice in his head. Jesus
told his followers, let your light so shine before others that they may see your good works and glorify your Father in heaven, right?
Do the thing.
So that really translates into this context. Can my husband see by my actions plainly without a doubt that I believe in and love God? Ask yourself that.
And I think that's what I saw in you. I know that it was very... Really? You had developed a very strong relationship with God when we were married, and you exemplified what you were trying to teach for the most part. I mean, we talked earlier
I made lots of mistakes.
We all do. We all did. But that, I think, is one of the best things. And we talked a few moments ago about the other couples that we know who had come to terms with their divergent, diverging paths. And I don't mean to say that they're going off in separate directions totally.
No.
What I'm trying to say.
But they have two different walks, two different kinds of walks with God.
But it was because of the way they lived their lives and they were exemplifying those spiritual beliefs.
They were living congruent with their values.
Right. That ultimately brought them to a full partnership.
That's so beautiful. Well, we're talking about prayer. I'm trying to get around to prayer. So if you ask yourself that question, can my spouse see without a doubt, that kind of thing, and if you're like, oh, gee, I don't know about that, then maybe you need to change the gist of your prayers from help my husband to help me, right? So I have a prayer. Ready?
You have a prayer?
I have a prayer. This is an example of the kind of prayer that you might consider offering up for your husband. Or not for your husband, sorry.
For yourself.
For yourself.
Okay.
Or for the two of you, really is what it boils down to. Help us.
Yeah.
Right?
Okay.
Teach me to let go. You are the one that is in control. Help me to trust you first and then to trust my husband. Humble my heart during the times when I feel I do things better than my husband. Help me to express my respect and love. And on the days when I'm not truly on board with him, give me a heart that says, I know you are trying to fulfill your responsibilities, and I trust you to do your best for us. Help me be gentle, patient, pleasant, grateful, and optimistic in a way that changes us both for the better. Please, God, graciously guide us. Give us the wisdom and patience and forbearance and forgiveness we need to support one another in our individual walks with you and in our common walk to raise our family in love.
So, Ramona, the talk around town is about some sort of master class that you've got going? Is that what I'm hearing on the underground?
And I know you don't like the part about the emotional underbelly.
Yeah, that kind of feels like I'm getting ripped open like a fish.
Well, you kind of are, but it really opens women's eyes, and I think they're going to love it. All they have to do is go to wifesavers.org/masterclass.
Home is with you wherever that may be.